Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating piece of philosophical history. We're going to be looking at Bediuzzaman Sayyid Nursi's 1922 work, the Treatise on Nature. Now, what makes this text absolutely incredible is its highly structured, step-by-step approach to taking down materialist philosophy. Whether you're a student of philosophy, science, or really just someone curious about how deep thinkers tackle the biggest questions of existence, well, you're in for a treat, because this text is widely considered a literal masterclass in structured reasoning. Okay, let's dive right in by starting with the most fundamental philosophical puzzle of all time. I mean, look around you. Everything around us exists, right? The trees outside, the insects on the ground, the stars in the night sky, human beings, all the way down to the microscopic atoms that make up our bodies. They are all here. But where does it all actually originate? It's the ultimate question, the big one that both philosophers and scientists have wrestled with for centuries. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the ultimate question, the locked room logic, the historical context of 1922, the three dangerous phrases, and finally, its modern relevance today. All right, starting off with part one, the ultimate question of where things come from. Which leads us right into part two, the locked room logic, where we explore the four possible options for existence. Nursi visualizes existence in this really fascinating way. Imagine you're standing in a room, and this room has exactly four doors. If you test the first door and it's locked, you naturally move to the next, right? Now, if you systematically discover that three of those doors are permanently, undeniably locked, what happens? Well, you don't actually need a separate key or some kind of additional proof to know that the fourth door is the exit. It's just a logical inevitability. And this brilliantly illustrates the formal concept of eliminative reasoning. It's a rigorous method used in philosophy and formal logic to find absolute certainty. You don't just point to the answer right away. Instead, you systematically demonstrate that all other possible alternatives are entirely impossible. Once you eliminate the impossible, well, whatever remains, no matter how extraordinary it might seem, absolutely must be the truth. So, Nursi lays out only four conceivable paths for existence. According to his analysis, everything either came to be because physical causes created it created itself, nature made it, or it was created by God. And these aren't just random guesses. Logically speaking, these are the only four categorical options available. Nursi's entire treatise is dedicated to methodically eliminating those first three paths, putting a giant red X next to them, which, according to his framework, leaves the fourth path as a necessary truth. Now, moving on to part three, the 1922 historical context. Let's look at the background here. The year is 1922. The Ottoman Empire has just collapsed, and a brand new Turkish nation is being rebuilt in Ankara. The mood is triumphant, for sure, but Nursi identifies a hidden threat. He notes that a materialist and atheist ideology, basically the view that matter and natural forces alone explain all of reality, is quietly infiltrating this newly rebuilding society. So he first writes his philosophical defense in Arabic, but realizing the public impact of that is just too limited, he translates and adapts it into a highly accessible Turkish version. He really wanted everyday people to understand these profound logical concepts. That sets the stage for part four, the three dangerous phrases, where we look at how people assign creative power. The very first phrase Nursi analyzes is the assumption that causes created it. This is the belief that natural forces or physical processes are the actual creators of things. It's kind of like saying a cloud created the rain, or the laws of physics created the universe, or natural selection created the human eye. But Nursi points out a massive logical flaw here. Saying the cloud made the rain is mistaking a passive tool for the active craftsman. Think about it. A paintbrush doesn't paint a masterpiece on its own, does it? It requires a painter. A cause is merely an instrument. So the observation that clouds condense is totally correct, but claiming the cloud is the creator of the rain is logically assigning immense conscious power to a completely unconscious tool. And just like that, the first door is locked. This second dangerous phrase claims things came into being by themselves. This is basically the argument of sheer chance. That highly complex, functional, and ordered structures just spontaneously arose without any underlying intelligence or guidance whatsoever. To explain why Nursi locks this second door, the source material points to a massive mathematical hurdle that modern science has brought to light. Let's look at this absolutely staggering number. The renowned mathematician Fred Hoyle calculated that the probability of just a single functional protein arising entirely by random chance is 1 in 10 to the power of 40,000. Yep, that is a 1 with 40,000 zeros after it. To put that sheer improbability into perspective, a single human cell contains roughly 3.2 billion DNA base pairs, and they have to be perfectly sequenced to avoid cell death. Yet, there are only about 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the entire observable universe. The math just flat out doesn't support the idea that this level of complex information could spontaneously write itself. As Nursi argued, a watch doesn't assemble itself and a line of computer code doesn't write itself, so why in the world would a living cell? So, with that second door locked, we arrive at the third phrase: nature made it. This is an incredibly common idea, the notion that nature acts as a sort of autonomous, intelligent agent that plans and produces everything. We hear it all the time, right? Mother Nature takes care of it, or nature designed it this way. Well, Nursi counters this with one of his most elegant logical takedowns. Nature is essentially a set of physical laws. But a law is literally just a description of how things behave. It is not a power that can actually act. Think about it this way. A rule book cannot physically construct a building. A roadmap shows you the way, but it possesses absolutely zero mechanical power to actually drive the car. To say the laws of nature created the universe is mistaking the mere description of a thing for the actual power that makes it happen. I absolutely love this quote from the source material because it beautifully summarizes this exact point. Nursi writes, "What they call nature is a pattern, not the designer. It is a set of laws, not the lawgiver. It is a creature draped in honor, not the creator." It just perfectly highlights that nature is a passive disposition. It's the surface, not the source. It entirely lacks the actual concrete power to create. And with that, the third door is firmly, permanently locked. Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Modern Relevance, looking at this text 100 years later. It's fascinating how Nursi's 1920s targets map directly onto their modern equivalents today. The language might have changed, but the underlying philosophical claims are completely identical. The 1920s positivism of causes created it aligns perfectly with the arguments made by new atheism today. The claim that it came about by itself is the absolute foundation of unguided abiogenesis and certain multiverse theories. And that Mother Nature ideology? Well, that is simply morphed into modern scientism and evolutionary naturalism. A huge takeaway here is Nursi's astonishing intellectual foresight. The source text argues that by mapping out these logical categories, Nursi essentially neutralized the core arguments of major modern thinkers decades before they even made them. When Richard Dawkins argues in The Blind Watchmaker that a blind process produces design, or when Stephen Hawking argues in The Grand Design that the law of gravity can create a universe from nothing, well, according to Nursi's framework, they are committing the exact logical errors he identified back in 1922. They're mistaking causes and descriptive laws for active creators. Even modern analytic philosophers like Thomas Nagel in 2012 are just now publishing works reaching very similar structural conclusions to this text. It's pretty wild. So, we've methodically mapped out the locked room of eliminative reasoning today, demonstrating how Nursi systematically eliminates 3 of the 4 doors of existence. But remember, this is just the foundational framework. I'm going to leave you with this provocative question as we prepare for Part A of our series. If causes, chance, and nature absolutely cannot create, how exactly do we explain the incredibly intricate pharmacy of life and the precise fine-tuning of our universe? Take some time to think about that, and we will unlock that exact discussion in our next explainer. See you then!